Johnny Carson's final words to his favorite guests reveal the man behind the desk, the icon who for 30 years invited America into their living rooms 5 nights a week as host of The Tonight Show. With his perfect timing, Midwestern charm, and signature golf swing, he became more than just a television host. He became the nation's companion through 3 decades of cultural and political change. But while millions felt they knew Johnny Carson, the man himself remained remarkably private, keeping a deliberate distance between his public persona and his closely guarded personal life. Carson was famous for his emotional restraint, rarely letting viewers see behind the carefully constructed facade of the consummate professional. Johnny created a character called Johnny Carson that he played on television, explained former Tonight Show producer Fred Cordova before his passing. The real man was much more complex, thoughtful, sometimes melancholy, and incredibly selective about who he allowed into his inner circle. This selectivity extended to his professional relationships as well. Out of the approximately 22,000 guests who appeared on his show during its historic run, only a handful earned Carson's genuine admiration and trust. These rare individuals connected with the real man behind the desk, forming bonds that transcended the typical host-guest dynamic. There were guests, and then there were Johnny's guests, recalled a longtime Tonight Show writer. With most celebrities, Carson was unfailingly professional but maintained a certain distance. But with his favorites, something changed: his posture, his engagement, even the light in his eyes. He was truly present with them. Some of these exchanges were broadcast, immortalized on television, while others happened quietly backstage. Together, they create a portrait of a man who, despite his nightly presence in America's homes, remained an enigma throughout his career and beyond. Number 9 was Bob Hope, Respect with Reservations. Hope represented an earlier generation of comedy, a vaudeville-trained performer whose USO shows and rapid-fire joke delivery had made him an American institution. Carson, who grew up watching Hope, always treated him with public deference as a comedy pioneer. Yet privately, their relationship was complicated. As Hope aged and his performances leaned more heavily on cue cards and pre-written material, Carson reportedly found their segments increasingly difficult to navigate. Johnny respected Hope's legacy enormously, explained one staff member. But privately, he felt Hope's style had become outdated, too rigid and rehearsed for the conversational approach Johnny had pioneered. Despite these private feelings, Carson was always professional when Hope appeared. During Hope's final Tonight Show visit, viewers saw only Carson's reverence. But backstage, a stagehand overheard Carson say to Hope, "Thanks for everything, Bob. You never missed, ever." It was a classic Carson moment, genuine respect for Hope's preparation and reliability despite their stylistic differences. Johnny valued professionalism above all, and though their approaches diverged, Hope's legacy remained honored on Carson's stage. Number 8 was Dean Martin, Celebrating Effortless Cool. Few guests brought out Carson's playful side like Martin. With his easygoing charm and happy drunk persona, Martin embodied old-school cool that Carson admired. Martin's appearances were unpredictable. He might miss his chair on purpose, forget questions mid-answer, or derail segments just for fun. Carson, usually so controlled, seemed to revel in this chaos. He once told Martin, "Don't change, Dino. The world needs at least one guy who never takes it seriously." A producer later recalled Johnny admitting Dean was the one guest who made him wish the show ran longer, an extraordinary confession from a host famous for watching the clock. The mutual appreciation created an atmosphere of relaxed spontaneity, allowing Carson himself to loosen up in ways audiences rarely saw. Number 7 was George Burns, the elder statesman. Burns, who performed well into his 90s, represented a living link to vaudeville and early comedy. Carson, a student of the craft, prepared more thoroughly for Burns than for most guests, approaching their conversations as a pupil. Burns once said, "If Johnny Carson likes you, you're bulletproof," a nod to Carson's influence. On Burns's final appearance, Carson said on air, "George, you're the only guy I know who gets funnier every year." Off camera, he told staff Burns made him believe age was just another punchline. Johnny respected that Burns was still evolving, still writing new material, rather than coasting on his reputation. For Carson, Burns wasn't just a guest. He was comedy royalty who gave Johnny the rare chance to be a student again. Number 6 was Lucille Ball, television royalty meets television royalty. When Ball appeared, it was the meeting of two pioneers, the woman who revolutionized the sitcom and the man who redefined late-night television. Carson treated her with unusual deference, seeing her as an equal, almost like a colleague. On air, their warmth was obvious, but backstage Carson was even more direct. After one appearance, he told her, "You're the real deal, Lucy." Always were. When Ball died in 1989, Carson broke his usual emotional restraint and devoted a heartfelt tribute segment to her. Lucy's passing hit him hard, a sign of how much she truly meant to him. Number 5 was Jack Benny, the master of timing. Of all his influences, Benny's was the most profound. His pauses, his timing, his willingness to be the butt of the joke, all shaped Carson's own style. During Benny's appearances, Carson would defer, setting up moments for Jack to shine. After Benny's final appearance, Carson reportedly told him, "You taught me how to listen." It was no exaggeration. Carson often admitted Benny taught him that silence could be funnier than words. For Carson, Benny was more than a guest. He was a mentor, a teacher, and comedy royalty. Number 4 was Bert Reynolds, the perfect prankster. Reynolds brought out Johnny's mischievous side. Their legendary rapport, water fights, shaving cream pranks, playful rivalry, produced some of the show's most iconic moments. Reynolds understood what Carson called the game, balancing entertainment with authenticity. Carson loved that Reynolds never took himself too seriously and was willing to look foolish for a laugh. On his final visit, Carson told him, "Don't ever stop coming back, Bert. I need someone to keep me honest." Reynolds was one of the few who could catch Carson off guard, making him laugh in ways that weren't scripted. Number 3 was Carol Burnett, the guest who brought sunshine. Burnett's warmth, wit, and lack of pretension made her a beloved guest. She wasn't there just to promote herself. She wanted to make good television. Carson trusted her completely, letting her run long, interact with the audience, and even take over parts of the show. Backstage, he once told her, "If I could build a show around just one person, it would be you." What Johnny admired most was her joy in performing, her collaborative spirit that made even Carson drop his guard and just enjoy the ride. Number 2 was Bob Newhart, the master of understatement. Carson and Newhart shared a similar sensibility, understated, precise humor that made the ordinary funny. Johnny once called Bob the most effortlessly funny man I know, which was perhaps the highest compliment he could give.